Coimbra. This is a competitive Eurogame for 2 to 4 players, midweight in nature, I would say. It's not particularly complicated when it comes to the core engine. It is about drafting dice and placing dice to trigger actions and resource collection. But it is made more complicated by what can only be referred to as icon porn. There are just so many icons. I hadn't seen so many icons in a single game in a while. So a lot of different effects, a lot of unique things. Expect the first couple of times to spend a lot of time looking at the rulebook for just this new icon that kind of sort of makes sense, but you're not sure, and so you're going to double check it over and over again. So there is that. That's for the introduction. The game looks very nice in terms of production, so colorful, again, so colorful, but all those icons, oh my goodness. But. So, as I said, looks nice and colorful. Here is the board. We have the area where we will place the dice that we draft, and that will trigger effects next to the line in which you place a die. If I place a dice there, then I'll collect a card from there, and so on and so forth. We have an area where we will move our pilgrims. They start from the middle of the board, and you can spend actions to move around. And when you reach a monastery, you place a disc there, and you collect the corresponding effect. And so by going around different directions, different order, you will collect different things. We have 4 tracks for different kinds of values, such as, the influence we're gaining among the council of the town, the merchants, and so on and so forth. They do work different in the sense that they trigger different effects. Also, being higher than other people on the tracks by the end of the game will trigger different scoring, meaning that certain tracks will be more valuable in certain games than others. Right now, this track is worth 13 to the player who is the highest there at the end of the game. This one only 9, but these tiles can be removed and placed different game to game, so that you don't have just one track which is always better than others. Here we have at the bottom an area where we place cards for voyages. These are end-of-game benefits. As you can see, you have quite a number. Only some of them are used in each game. Again, variety when it comes to end-of-game scoring. During the game, you will have the opportunity of placing your discs on these voyages. Each player can have 1 disc on each voyage. You cannot bid or invest in the same voyage twice, and simply at the end of the game you'll go through all of those and see how many things you score. As a Eurogame, your mission in life here is to collect points, and there are just so many ways of scoring points during the game, different sources of scoring points at the end of the game. Really, at the end, you're trying to serve the largest and biggest and more varied point salad that you can possibly make. During the game, we will collect cards representing different people that we have influence over. First, this symbol here indicates the advancement, the kind of track that you advance on when you acquire the card, and by how many spaces you advance. I don't know why the arrow has to point to the side as opposed to up, because ultimately we're going up on those tracks. And so, for example, when I acquire this card, then I advance by 1 space there. When I advance this card, I advance by 2 spaces on the same track. These are the symbols here indicate when the advantage indicated here is triggered. This means instantaneous, so I would simply collect 4 guards. This is one of the 2 main currencies in the game. One is coins, and one is guards. You have your little trusty personal player aid, and so when I collect guards, I go up like that. When I collect coins, and when I spend coins, and when I spend guards, pretty intuitive that way. Also, you see that lightning symbol means that effect triggers immediately, and then I'll store it here next to my player aid in that area. This symbol indicates that this effect triggers during the phase C of each turn, so I'm gonna store it there, tagged there that way. under the C section of my player aid. This is important, even the ones that don't do anything anymore, it's important that you do them because you may be able to score sets of different cards that you collected during the game. I would say pretty much almost everything that you see here will score you points in one way or another. This advantage here will trigger during the main phase of the turn, which is the phase C, the main phase, and simply allows me to buy cards that you need to buy with coins with a discount of 1. Other cards are bought with soldiers instead, with guards instead, and that indicates the kind of currency that you had to spend to acquire that card. So, also, we play over 4 turns. Again, player with the best point salad by the end of turn 4 wins the game. You roll these dice. You don't use all of them depending on the number of players. And then players, starting with the starting player, which is important, there's a procedure to determine that, will start drafting dice. When you take a die, you place your base on it. Well, actually, you place it on the base, so you know who collected that die. And then you place it in one of these areas, in the lower, middle, upper town, or in the castle if you want to, kiss up to the king. And then suppose the next player goes there, and they do that. And then it's my turn again. The colors for now doesn't matter for now, but they will matter later in the turn. Now, here's the thing. If I'm placing a die in an area that already has dice there, I need to do it in a specific order. In the 3 sections of the town, the dice, as you can see indicated there, are placed in descending order from left to right. So if I'm going to place this die here, it's going to go there. If I place it there, it's going to go there. The opposite is true in the castle area where they're placed in ascending order. That gives a chance to lower values to still do something. And this is important because this indicates the order in which things will be resolved. So for example, I place that one there, and so on and so forth. Everybody will place 3 dice. And I'm kind of going randomly here just to give you a sense of how it may work. Just like so. There are even effects that allow you to kind of bump the value of a die in terms of pips to place it closer to the side. Then starting top to bottom, suppose somebody didn't go there. Top to bottom, we're going to start resolving. In each area, players will collect an advantage going from left to right. Here, these are tiles that will give you different kinds of advantages, including this thing that you can put on a die to increase its value. Also, those crowns that you see there on those tiles, those crowns will be used to determine turn order. The most crowns go first. And other kinds of things, such as moving your pilgrim on the board by 3 spaces right away, collecting guards or coins. That's for free. That's just a gift that comes to you from the king. When it comes to these other sections of town, you gotta pay. And here's a really nice balancing mechanism, which is the cost to acquire a card, whether in guards or in coins. The cost is the number of pips that you have there. So basically having a high value there means that you go first, you have better choice, but also makes it more expensive. And so here, this player, well, the second die will only cost 2 after this one goes. They belong to the same player, so that's not a huge deal. But here, hey, this player paid a pretty high price to get the chance of choosing first. So maybe there was something that they really wanted. And again, the idea is that once you pay the cost indicated by your pips, you take the card. If it's an instantaneous effect, you resolve it right away. And then in any case, you place the card next to your player aid. This symbol here, the exclamation mark, means this is resolved at the end of the game. More symbols, this is diploma. There are some cards that will give you this kind of diplomas, and you will get a set of those. You score them in sets at the end of the game together with the other 49.74 things that you're going to score at the end of the game. So the general idea is pretty simple, really. I mean, this is 80% of the game, which is drop the dice and place them there first, then top to bottom and left to right. Players collect the dice as they remove them. That's when they trigger the effects the effects that we mentioned. And again, in some cases, just get money on a track. In some cases, no effect, because it's the end of the game effect. When it comes to the pilgrim, that usually slows down things, because then you're actually moving your pilgrim by a number of dots, possibly collecting resources, therefore adjusting tracks, and so on and so forth. So you go through all of these areas, and that completes phase C, which again is the main phase of the game. Suppose that by the time it's time for you to resolve an action for one reason or another, you're unable to complete it or you don't want to complete it, then instead of collecting a card, this section of the board reminds you that you can also take this other action instead of collecting coins and guards instead of a card, but that's usually not so great. One interesting thing, if you're playing with fewer than 4 players, there will be these tokens on the board. I'm just kind of placing them randomly now, but there is a way. And those are basically non-playing dice. So when you're adding your dice there, you're still placing them in the usual order. So in this case, purple goes and picks up a card, and then the board goes and destroys the highest value card that they can find. It is a tie, the leftmost among the highest value. So that's an interesting idea. You have to take into account the fact that the board will consume cards automatically with fewer than 4 players. Then after we have placed the dice and collected them to collect cards and trigger other effects, such as moving on the tracks, and moving our pilgrim here. We determine player order, which will be based on the crowns that we collected from cards, from sources, from tiles. And then we have the phase where we collect, the phase E, where we collect resources, we collect rewards from our tracks based on where we are. Now, in many games, that simply means that you're just, you take coins and you take guards, and that may be the case also. But if you're collecting rewards on this track, say my influence is here, then I move my pilgrim by 2. And again, that is onboard actions that do things. Here is when the color matters, because when we are collecting resources, remember the dice that we use, now we collect resources from the influence tracks where we have our dice. And it's entirely possible to collect resources from a track multiple times. If there's a situation right now, I'm gonna collect 10 coins because I'm gonna collect from the orange track twice, and my influence marker is next to the 5 coin reward. And this one, again, now in this phase only the color matters, and here I'm collecting 5 victory points because I have the green die, and I have 1, and it's next to the 5. So that's how you collect rewards. So as you can see, there are a lot of different angles here because I'm trying to collect the dice with the values that allow me to get early enough, but they don't cost me too much, and still I can get whatever I want, or hopefully what I want. At the same time, I'm also trying to collect good stuff. Maybe I have a track that really is very good, but I don't get the right die, so that also is a problem. So interesting decisions there. Finally, after we collect resource there, everybody has a chance of investing on one of the tracks. The cost is the number indicated there. The currency is the symbol next to the number, and so again, coins or guards. And by placing your symbol, your token there, at the end of the game, you go through all of these cards and you check what they do. And again, some are self-explanatory, just the text, like double the value of your least developed influence track, pretty self-explanatory. 2 victory points for each card of that time that you collected. That's why, remember, it's so important to keep every character card. 3 points for each character card in excess of 10 cards. 2 points for each monastery level 1. You can see from the number there, where you have a presence, where you place a disc, and so on and so forth. Other tiles, you score monasteries where you don't have a presence. So there's just anything and everything will be used and can be used and will be used against you in the court of the icons that you need to know and the game effects that you need to remember, because everything and anything can possibly give you victory points. Case in point, at the end of the 4th round, you score victory points. You should have some or a lot on the board already. And once you do that, you go through all of these things that include, for example, majority on the influence tracks, those diploma sets that you have, the voyages, everything and anything, and at that point the player with the highest score wins the game. Coimbra is a Eurogame and it has all of the hallmarks of the style. It has really nice cardboard and wooden components, nice table presence, limited randomness because, yeah, cards and dice, but those are resources available to everybody. There's an emphasis on the mechanics, on the economic element, and also there is normalization of European colonialism, which of course is something that the Eurogames have often done. And it's really not necessary, in my opinion. Well, here you say, well, I'm not going on those voyages of discovery. I'm not taking part of those colonial voyages. I'm just sponsoring them. But again, Eurogames have a lightly sketched theme. You could have the same game without that element of European colonialism, and I think the game would be better. Now, as for the game engine itself, there's a really good idea here. I think the implementation is at times too much of a good thing. Just from the number of icons, there are 4 pages in the rulebook just dedicated to the icons. And before you get there, there's some other icons that you need to be familiar with. There's just so much of that. Maybe one fewer track would have been okay. Maybe some other aspects of the game could have been pruned a little bit more, trimmed down a little bit more. It just feels like too much of a good thing. And it's not just because there are a lot of different effects, a lot of different icons, a lot of different things. That would be even okay, I guess, if everybody is collecting stuff and meanwhile thinking about what they can do. And a lot of Eurogames have this feel of a parallel race, so that while I'm deciding my moves, you're deciding yours. And when it's my turn, I implement mine, then it's yours, and you implement the ones that you've been thinking about. You can't really do that here because, on one hand, it's a good thing. There's a lot of indirect interaction. The die that I take, you don't take. The die that I place in an area affects the way you're going to be able to place yours and the cost and the order. So, what you have here is that, again, it could be good. There's direct interaction in which I'm affecting you while I'm pursuing my objectives. But it may cause analysis paralysis because what you have here, again, it's not like here we collect, then we spend, collect, spend, but collect a little, make a decision about it, place a die, and I know that will allow me to get a little, which may allow me to buy the next die unless you take it. So I had to think about that. Basically, you have small increments in the resources that you collect, and that allows you to generate some actions that will allow you to generate some more resources and so on and so forth. And all this is highly interactive. It depends on what you're going to do, and I'm going to try to factor that in. And so it may definitely lead to analysis paralysis. Not every player will be equally prone, but it may happen. I've experienced it. And I just feel that, again, if there were fewer options, fewer things that you could do, the flow of the game would be better. Again, this being said, with some turns taking a little too long because my adult friends that I played it with were taking a little too long, maybe. If you're watching this, it's not true. You were fine. Just speaking generically, okay? But suppose that happened, although some turns maybe took a little too long for my taste. The game was still interesting. I still enjoyed it, actually. It's just that as I was playing it, I felt that there was an even better game buried in here, struggling to come out, asking to come out. And I think the same core idea, again, with fewer rules, with fewer decisions to take into account, then I'm able to try to compute everything, the interaction and my own planning. I think that would be pretty good. One thing, of course, that I think is pretty strong is the fact the final scoring is indeed pretty nebulous. I think the game does a good job of, again, technically you could just look at everybody's display, but then there would be, yes, enough analysis paralysis that you're never going to be invited to game night again. In truth, you will collect at the end points from so many different things that you have a good endgame engine. you will definitely be able to come up at the end, to come on top at the end, even if you are behind, simply in terms of the points that people have collected. Don't fall behind by 1,000,000 points, but definitely it can be the revenge of the underdog at the final scoring, and that's good. That's good. So if I said ironically, or I sounded like I was ironic when I mentioned the point salad, that the element is definitely there, but it's not always bad, especially when it makes endgame scoring exciting. And so even if there's a runaway leader, you don't know it, you always had the feeling, I may be able to catch up at the end. It's entirely possible. So Coimbra is a good Euro game. The pace, I think, will be better if you play strictly with players that you know are really good at avoiding analysis paralysis. If somebody has that weakness, then this game definitely will give them incentive to do so. And from time to time, it feels a little bit, again, blurry just because there are so many things to take into account. What you have here, again, I want to make sure that you don't get the feeling I'm giving this game a negative review because I enjoy playing it. It is just that I feel it could be even better or a lot better if it was a little slimmer and with fewer icons. That's my assessment of Coimbra.